On the way, take 504.
It's me, Robert.
And I'm Chris.
He's Chris. We're on the way. I'm Robert Justice.
And I'm Chris Smith.
Join us.
We're on the way.
That's how we start. Welcome. Hey, so we're back after took a week hiatus, and we are back in action. All phones are not on silent apparently. Because knowing the silent memo.
People can't listen.
Yeah, but maybe let's go ahead and make that silent.
Simple directions.
Sorry guys, we will be interrupted later by Evan bringing beverages, but I'm cool with that because he's bringing beverages. But today we are joined by special guest Moses Godinez.
Hey.
Yeah, we were lucky enough to grab him because it's spring break.
It is.
Moses goes to Texas A&M, studying engineering.
All right.
What's his little sign again?
So he's
Huh?
smarter than us.
It's we gig them
Okay.
like this.
Yep, they do that. Moses studies and gigs, and then studies. Yeah. So we know. Everyone in our church knows Moses, but we know Moses on a stronger level because when he first came to church, he was part of our home group that Chris leads, and both of us had the privilege of getting to do some Bible study with him, so he's special to us. But why don't you give us the? I know.
Start cutting the tissues.
First person that's used one.
So, why don't you give the folks a brief intro of who you are and like a very brief testimony? Because we want to have you on later for like your full testimony.
Yeah.
But we'll give the folks a teaser of where you came from, your background.
Yeah. So my name is Moses. I'm 19, sophomore at Texas A&M. My first time here at the home church was January 18th, 2015. So just about 2 years ago. And I walked in, was really broken, had a lot of things going on in my life, and basically like I texted one of the guys that goes to church here who I knew when I was younger, and he told me church started at 10:30, and I walk in at 10:30 and there's nobody in the sanctuary, and so it's like really confusing, and so I just start praying, and
I remember that.
yeah. Yeah, I was basically just telling God that, you know, I was doing some things I shouldn't have been doing. I was actually selling marijuana. And I had been feeling really convicted about it, and I said, you know, Lord, I'm planning on stopping at this time, but if you need me to stop before then, you need to let me know. And so just kind of prayed right before church, and as soon as I got done praying, I saw that Chris was like sitting right behind me, and so we got to talking and stuff, and I had been looking for someone to teach me like a Bible study, because there was just a lot of things that I didn't understand, and so I got connected with him, and actually during that service I got the Holy Ghost and have been coming to church ever since. And
awesome.
So that's just kind of like a very quick testimony of where
That's
I came
good.
from.
Also, I think it's good maybe for the listeners to know too is that we're hoping that we'll reach a lot of folks that are kind of on the fence about coming to church at all, or even maybe they're not 100% sure there's a God. And at one point you said you were atheist or agnostic, right?
Right, I was atheist, completely atheist.
Yeah, and you gave it a chance and you found it out to be a real deal,
Mm-hmm.
a real deal. So that's cool because I think maybe there's other people that will hopefully make that same journey.
Yeah.
And you're an example of somebody that's been there.
Yeah.
So we'll get to bring that up when we really get to sit down and talk with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a cool story, man.
Yeah, it's cool finding out everybody's backgrounds.
Yeah.
That's what makes it so interesting.
Right.
We all come from different walks, and we've talked about it before too. It's what makes our testimonies and our witnessing so powerful to other people, because we can reach certain people that deal with the things that we've had to go through,
Mm-hmm.
and makes it cool. So
Yeah, That's really
And
inspiring.
actually, I did stop selling weed like that same day.
Okay.
Like right after I got the Holy Ghost, I texted my drug dealer and was saying like, "Hey man, like it's over, like we're done." Was actually gonna pick up some pot. I don't know if you knew that.
No.
Yeah, I had $1,200 in my car, ready to go buy some weed after church,
Oh,
and had texted my dealer right before church. And after I got the Holy Ghost, I sent him another message, just told him that it was done, that we were through. So,
Yeah,
I don't know
that's
if you
awesome.
knew that either.
No.
Yeah.
Did he let you off the hook easy, or was he like, "Hey man"?
I mean, what's he gonna do about it, right?
Yeah. What are you gonna do? Tell the cops? Something?
Yeah. Call the cops.
Yeah, that's
That's
pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. Yeah, Moses is a pretty special guy to us, and we always like having him when he comes in, because we'll get to see him Sunday, but we'll get to see him Tuesday for home group and through the week. And
well, we don't get to see him all the time because he's
Yeah.
away at college most of the time, so it's spring break.
yeah,
so
but dude, I'm
he's back.
always super happy when you text me that you're coming to visit, man. It's always good to see you. So
Yeah.
we're glad that we got to make it happen. Your
Yeah,
spring break, and
absolutely.
we're gonna have David Holland, and we were gonna have Shayna and Miller, and some things kind of switched around. Then we're gonna have David, but David would have preferred more time, and I realized that Moses had spring break, and it was perfect.
Yeah, and I'm a college student, procrastinate anyway. So.
Yeah. Like us in these notes. Well, you guys know today we're talking about Numbers 1 through 18. So if you guys will bear through the first half of this with us, we got some more, kind of like Leviticus.
Yeah.
But hey, look, Carrie's here.
Hey, how's it going?
The sound guy's girlfriend's here. Carrie, say hi to the folks real loud.
Hello.
You can't hear. Well, you probably can hear.
Probably. It's very likely.
I know
So,
we-
if y'all remember Leviticus.
He said, I know we can hear.
So last time we talked about Leviticus, and there was a lot of having to break down like the law and what was some of these like official rules, and we had fun with it. But really, about the first half of Numbers, we're doing Numbers 1 to 18. A lot of that is the same sort of stuff, and then there's some really neat story events that happen in the last half of what we're breaking down. So we're gonna make it as entertaining as we can.
Try
Yeah, we're gonna try. We got our
and keep it godly.
well, we'll do our best. I mean, if you're like super spiritual, maybe don't watch this. Listen, the maturity level of the people involved in this podcast is not.
Keep it playing though, so we can get the view on there.
Yeah.
Like, comment, subscribe.
So out of the gate on this thing, we start with a census. Numbers 1 starts with a census.
Which is where Numbers gets its name
Yeah.
from, because there was a couple of censuses that took place. So the people were ordered or numbered in several different ways that we're going to talk about. So.
Yeah. Now I'm sure everybody knows what a census is, but those of you that don't, if you're younger or you just don't know anything about like populations and how we basically every 10 years everybody gets counted up, and that's when the population signs on like on your city limit sign will change is after the census has been taken, and they get new counts for how many people are living where.
I keep waiting for Johnson cities to go up, but it doesn't seem like it ever does.
Oh, it's 1649. Is that how many we've got? I remember it was 998.
Really?
Yeah, and then 14 something. Yeah.
Okay, maybe it has.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel like it.
I think we're counting the cows though, to be honest, which is not fair. But that's what a census is. When they did a census on Israel, they didn't count every person. They didn't count the tribe of Levi in this first census.
Yep.
The second, but what they did do is they counted all the males that were 20 years old and older. Basically, what they did was they counted all like the fighting men, basically.
Yeah, fighting age. And there was no cap to that, so it was basically the beginning was 20 and up, but it was pretty much 20 and whoever was able.
Yeah.
So if you were physically capable and you're
Of throwing down.
you're counted one of the fighting men.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So that's how they did the count, and it turns out there is 603,550 fighting men.
it's a lot of dudes.
That's a lot of dudes.
A lot of testosterone filled fighting guys.
And so the Levites were exempt because of why?
because of their duties as the priests
Yeah.
and as the
Oh, because they
caretakers
couldn't
of-
fight.
Yeah, they
Oh,
weren't
I see.
allowed. Yeah, they were consecrated to God, like they were like a separate from the
Yeah.
rest. And several rules apply to them too, like which we get into later. But like they weren't, they didn't have. And when I got in the Promised Land, there wasn't special land for them, like a
Yeah.
special area marked out for them. They would be kind of scattered throughout the tribes, serving as
Mhm.
priests, and
Yeah. So they were provided for basically by a forced charity kind of.
yeah,
Mhm.
So all the people were supposed to give certain things, and certain parts of the sacrifices that they would give would go to the Levites. That was their, and also the tithes and offerings.
mm,
Certain percentage of the tithes and offerings would go to them,
mm,
and that would be their livelihood, their part, their inheritance, I guess, because
Yeah.
it wasn't land. So,
mm.
all right, we'll give them a second.
Yeah. Bye, Noah and Carrie. All right.
All right, now we can talk and shit. So now that that's over with, now that I can hear myself think for a minute.
Yeah, but yeah. That's the reason the Levites were not included. Of course, we'll talk about the second census down the line that was for them. But yeah, they were not, which leads me to believe that they did not fight. Like they didn't pick up
Yeah.
the sword. I'm assuming
Yeah.
because they didn't count them in the fighting men.
No, they weren't. They weren't counted. They were separate. So
Yeah. So like,
Yeah.
what do you think? So like, so if you were there back then, right? Like, just like the thought of the draft today,
Mhm.
it's kind of nerve wracking.
Right.
Like your number could come up, then you're off fighting war, right?
yeah,
So think about this. You're young and you're 20, and you're a Levite.
yeah,
Whew. But at the same time, like, what if you touch the wrong thing? Because they had all these rules.
yeah. There's a lot of rules
To
for
fight,
the
even
Levites.
like you had to be clean to go fight.
No, what
No,
I'm
like
saying
the-
is,
Yeah, like the trade-off. The
Yeah.
Levites, they were in charge of all the things for the tabernacle and stuff. So if you touched the wrong thing or whatever,
Oh.
or did
Yeah.
the wrong
Okay.
thing, then you could be struck down. Like
you could be struck down.
Oh, I see.
So it's a
I
trade-off,
see what
either
you
like
mean.
you're gonna be in the
Go-
army, or
immediate death,
Yeah.
possibly.
yeah, but possible immediate death. Yeah.
And so, well, it's important to know too that back then they numbered every person in that age group
Mm-hmm.
that were in the other 12 tribes, as
Mhm.
fighting men. In case they had to go to war, all these guys were going to have to go and throw down. There were special circumstances like that it gets in later, where if you were just married and all those things, there was rules. You didn't have to go off and fight. There was a certain time period.
Mm-hmm.
If you had certain duties that needed to be done, like you just bought some property or whatever, there was some rules for that. But basically, if you were in that age group and you went to war, and Israel went to war, then you were going.
Mm-hmm.
And so you look at Israel now, and they don't distinguish between man or woman, but you have to serve in the military for like 2 years.
Yeah.
So now,
It's like a mandatory.
Really?
Yeah.
like
Wow,
it's
that's
mandatory service.
Come
for
on
2
in,
years.
Evan.
So
We told him that you
we
might
got
come.
more visitors
We
coming
got-
in.
Yeah. I told him Evan would be coming in. We had Noah and Carrie just earlier in and out.
which one's diet.
Oh,
It's okay.
I can tell, probably.
No.
What did you get? Did you get a Dr. Pepper? I see.
Mhm.
I can tell.
Yeah,
Thank you, Evan. Evan's brought us drinks. He's like,
I think yeah. Okay, so Robert.
Wow.
I think this
That's
is
no, that's yours, Robert.
okay. Thank you, Evan.
Thanks,
The
man.
normal
We
Dr.
haven't had this kind of service.
I know.
I know.
We need to
Since
bring
we've been
Evan
doing
on
this
as the guy. Yeah, I think it's fair. Thank you, Evan. All right. Wow. Yeah, so the fighting men, yeah, they're like Chris was saying, there are different circumstances in which you could maybe not have to fight to the death.
But that's not going to be in the chapters that we're talking about today. That's
Yeah.
later. So,
Wait, actually, did you say Sunny Moses?
No, does yours say?
Mine
Mine
tastes
might.
like it's got sugar. Did you say it?
Yeah, actually.
All right.
all right.
Sorry,
so,
listeners.
So, all right. So we got Levi wasn't included in the census. There were 603,550 fighting men. So those are the people that were numbered in the census from 20 and up out of the 12 tribes. So I guess next thing we want to talk about is organization of Israel's camp.
Mm-hmm.
So God gives them a plan to kind of organize everybody in the camp by tribes. And this is, we talked about before, God's a God of order.
Mm-hmm.
There's a certain way that God wants things done, and it's not just always just because God says, okay, this is just how to do it, because I want it done this way. But usually there's a purpose behind it. So it makes the camp organized so that they can react quicker to invaders, or whenever they have to assemble somebody, or assemble the congregation, or where to find certain camps, where, all those kind of things. And basically, you've got 12 tribes, 13 tribes if you count Levi.
Mm-hmm.
But the 12 tribes are arranged in a certain place around the tabernacle. This is all centering around the tabernacle. And the tabernacle, the opening to the tabernacle, the door of the tabernacle it's faced to the east.
Always facing
Always
east.
facing the east, yeah. So we start off with the on the outside area, outside the camp, the furthermost groups or tribes outside the camp. On the east side is Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. So these are the three of the tribes.
And you'll recognize, like we said before, you're going to recognize all the tribe names from being sons of Jacob.
Yeah. So basically, Judah's an important one to remember.
Mm-hmm.
So this is Jesus going to come out of this, out of Judah. In the south is Reuben, Simeon, and Gad. And the west is Ephraim, Manasseh, and Benjamin. And Ephraim and Manasseh, or Manasseh, however you say that.
Manasseh.
Manasseh. Those two are actually children of Joseph. Joseph was one of Jacob's kids, so they actually split because Levi is now the priestly tribe, I guess, the tribe of the priests. They don't really count, so to make 12 tribes of Israel, Joseph's sons were split up into 2 tribes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and when you hear Levites mentioned later in the Bible, like later throughout, they weren't thought of as like a separate tribe, really. They were just thought of as, those are the priests.
Yeah,
those are the
priestly
religious workers. Yeah.
So, and then in the north was Dan, Asher, and Naphtali. So that's how the tribes were arranged. And then of course the Levites, which we'll talk about in a minute, but they were kind of subdivided into three families, I guess, and they were positioned on the inside of the camp, right around the tabernacle. And I guess we can go ahead and go there, but there was the family of Kohath, the family of Gershon, and then Merari. And
I'm assuming that is it Gershon? Is that the son of Moses? His line?
I'm not totally sure on that one.
Yeah, I'm not certain either.
Yeah. That was one thing I didn't look at. So.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Dock me a point on that one. I don't know. So, all right. So, Kohath, that family was on the south side. Gershon was on the west side, and Merari was on the north side. And Moses, Aaron, and sons. So, Eleazar and Ithamar, was that his name?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ithamar.
Those and their families are on the east side, so they're guarding the entrance to the tabernacle.
Yeah, because no one can just walk up in the tabernacle.
Yeah.
In fact,
you walk up and you die.
You do anything basically.
Yeah.
You do anything that a Levite's supposed to do,
Yeah.
you're gonna drop dead pretty much.
Yeah.
And all of these different families, tribes, they had jobs. So Kohath, they carried all the furniture, or all the those kind of objects, but they couldn't even touch it until the Aaron and his sons would like cover it first.
Yeah, these were all the holy things of the tabernacle. So the Ark of the Covenant,
Showbread.
Yeah, the table of showbread,
gold lampstand, all
yeah,
that.
the brazen altar, all those things. They couldn't
Carried
touch
them
them
around.
until Eleazar went in and covered them all up.
And they had to be carried by hand, right?
Yeah,
They had to be carried by hand.
Yeah. So
That's-
yeah,
Can you imagine marching for miles? Like the Kohathites were ripped, probably.
yeah, probably so.
And
But
we,
they had, there's only a few articles of furniture and stuff here, and like pots and all the candlesticks and all those type things.
Mm.
And it was split up between like 2,000 and some odd people. So I'm sure they got plenty of like breaks.
Yeah.
Switching off. Hey, you carry this.
That's my shift next. But can you imagine like being one of the guys carrying the Ark of the Covenant?
Yeah.
How scary that would be.
yeah, because we were talking earlier, right, about like how the Ark of the Covenant like is like lost supposedly right now, and like if it would have power,
Today.
still
Mhm.
today, and it was just kind of funny because we were talking about it earlier, and Chris was like, I don't even want to look at it. If
they found it, I'm letting somebody else go first.
Is it beautiful?
Is it?
Yeah, because we'll actually get to it in a later episode where somebody actually, stumbles and the ark's kind of tipping over, and one of them reaches out trying to do a good thing and like keep the ark from falling, and he has to touch it, and God like strikes him down dead like that.
That's fun. Yeah.
So, and it's not because God just hated that guy or whatever, but it's God is so holy.
Right.
His holiness, we're like filthy rags.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Even when we're doing everything right,
Mm.
I mean, we're as perfect as we can try to be, right?
Mm.
And to God and His holiness, we're like nothing. It's by God's amazing grace,
Right.
that we can, even go before His throne, right? So,
Yeah.
so when God's that holy, He's telling people, hey, you gotta sanctify the priests and sanctify the Levites and all these things, and it's basically so that they won't die whenever they come into His presence.
Yeah. And a lot of that is because Old Testament's a real physical kingdom.
Yeah.
I mean, sin was covered with the blood of animal sacrifice. Though their warfare was a physical warfare. Everything was very physical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the spiritual kingdom that we live in today, the weapons of our warfare are not carnal. Right? We fight, and that's what Paul says.
Yeah.
We fight spiritual battles, and
Right.
we
Not against flesh and
Yeah.
blood.
and Jesus Christ has already shed His blood for the remission of
Yeah.
our sins. And there's all these things that are different today. They lived in under a completely
Yeah.
different covenant because Christ wasn't around. They had the circumcision. They had
Yeah.
these are things that that the principles remain the same, but we don't have to do those physical acts.
Yeah. It's not physical anymore. It's spiritual now. So
Mhm.
all those things that they did physically, we do spiritually now.
Yeah.
So we sacrifice spiritually now.
Right.
We're covered spiritually now. We humble ourselves spiritually. We, in prayer, and God does things through us. Not so much a physical thing anymore, which is, thank goodness, thank God, thank the Lord.
Yeah.
Because I probably would have been burned up and swallowed up in the ground and ground up in the dirt or whatever many times.
Yeah.
I mean, there could have been all kinds of new things that would have been invented just for me.
Yeah.
We need this new set of laws for this.
Well,
We're
I try.
we're amending the Ten Commandments.
I try, but hey, this flesh is evil.
Yeah. But yeah, that's where all the Levites were, and that's why everything was so specific because of that physical kingdom they lived in, and these Levites had to carry out their duties very specifically.
Yeah.
Gershon carried the tent, the coverings, and the hangings
Yeah.
of the tabernacle. Merari carried the boards, bars, sockets, and pillars, all the heavy stuff. But they got to use carts.
Yeah. So everybody. So that was one of the. Once the tabernacle was erected for the first time, there's there's some other things that happened. Aaron and his sons were sanctified, and then the Levites were sanctified. But there was also some like gifts that were dedicated to the tabernacle by the 12 tribes, and some of those gifts were 6 wagons and 12 oxen. And so those got divided up between the children of Merari and Gershon to carry all the stuff. And we talked about before the Kohathites, they had to carry all the stuff physically. So they lost out and didn't have to, or didn't get a cart.
Yeah, every once in a while, like you see in the Bible where it like talks about a cool saying that they had back then.
A cool saying.
Like a cool adage that they had for that day. Like, well, one of the things they used to say in Nimrod's day, if someone was like a mighty hunter, even though Nimrod's a super evil guy, they would say, "This man is like Nimrod."
Yeah.
And like every once in a while,
Yeah.
I wonder if back then they're like, "Wow, that man's built like a Kohathite." Is he strong like a Kohathite?
Yeah, but you wonder, I'm sure this stuff gets heavy. It's made out of wood, and some of it's overlaid with gold and stuff. And the Ark of the Covenant, the whole lid, I mean, is made out of gold. Like one thing of gold that's like beaten into like this lid. So, I mean, I imagine that's heavy. But it has like staves that go into it, and so, I don't know how long the staves are, so how many people got on each corner. I don't know. But, I mean, you got to figure they're trading off like 2,000 guys. I mean,
Yeah.
So, but yeah, if you're going a long distance, you might be kind of buff after a while, but I mean,
I'll take 2 shifts.
I got this.
Or like if they wanted to get a little buffer.
Yeah.
I'll take 2 shifts. I'll take 3 shifts.
It's like, hey, your buddy, can you do me a solid and take my shift?
You could kind of like reverse psychology. Use reverse psychology on somebody, like, or not reverse psychology, but you could like, get in their head and be like, "Man, you're looking a little depleted these days."
You sure you've been pulling your shit, man?
Yeah. Is your like? Does your wife ever comment on how weak you're looking? Like, hey, hey, if it's not for you, just say so. But you could take my shift, and then maybe impress her.
Yeah. Instead of, hey, honey, I'm going to the gym.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, honey, I'm gonna go lift the altar.
It's like, hey, baby, I'm doing 3 shifts today.
Oh my goodness.
I'm gonna be swole. So this brings us to the second census taken, and it was like a 2-part deal, and this is for like all the Levites.
Yeah.
Everyone that could basically. So we've already, the main tribes, the 12 tribes of Israel have already been. The census has been taken to see who the able-bodied fighting men were.
Yeah, Levi was excluded from that.
Right, and now we're gonna do a census here, basically, for all of like who can serve, basically, and in what capacity. So they do they do a census for 1 month old and up, right? That's the redeemed firstborn.
Yeah, so basically, whenever they were going out of Egypt, or actually after they got out of Egypt, God says, hey, you're going to have to dedicate the firstborn to me. So you're going to have to redeem them with the sacrifice. Because of the firstborn that I took from the Egyptians, and I passed over, your houses and didn't kill your firstborn. So, and they celebrated the Passover in remembrance of that. Well, now God's saying, okay, well, instead of your firstborn, I'm going to take the Levites instead. So number all your firstborn from 1 month old to
upward.
And upward.
Yeah.
And those are going to be like the firstborn to me. They're sanctified, right? And he gives them as a gift to Aaron and his sons, and to perform duties for the tabernacle, like carrying everything, like we just talked about, and all those things. And there's actually a surplus when they number those. There's actually like 273 extra people compared to
all the firstborn.
all the firstborn of the rest of the tribes. So God has them give like a monetary sacrifice in like shekels or whatever to actually redeem those 273 extra people. And then like Robert said, then they have another census, and it's men from the ages of 30 to 50 out of the Levites. And those are the ones that are actually going to be doing like the priestly duties and carrying things and all that.
Yeah, and
in service to the tabernacle.
I wonder if this is where, because you guys remember New Testament, so Jesus' ministry begins at 30.
Yeah.
And that was normal back then for you to really blossom at 30. And I believe the custom was that you got married at 30. If you're going to get married, you got married at 30.
Yeah.
And left your parents' house and started your life. But I think people who were...
That had to be a rule for guys.
Right.
Because the women got married at like a young age.
Yeah, probably 14 or 15.
Guys, I don't know about 30 for sure.
Yeah, well, see, it was either they got married at that time, or if you were going to be in any capacity, like a teacher, like a rabbi, or your ministry did not begin in Jewish culture until you were 30. And that's why Paul tells Timothy later, don't let anyone despise you for being a young fella. You know, that's the old custom of the Hebrews, but don't let anybody despise you for that. Because he's probably like mid-20s or something, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, but that's their custom. And I wonder if it came from here where the Levite men were numbered from 30 to 50.
That's a good point. I don't know.
Does that mean they retired at 50 later? Can't be right by
Well, actually, it sounds like, from what I read, it sounds like they retire at 50 from like any of the like heavy work.
Yeah.
And at 50, once they hit 50, they're just like a priest, like a minister. They just get to minister to people in the tabernacle or whatever.
Someone told Pastor that guy, he's 90 miles an hour, man.
Yeah.
He can do anything. Like, he can't. Can you imagine someone telling him at 50, like, hey, like,
slow down.
You gotta stop.
You gotta stop, pal. He'd be like,
take it easy.
My lands, and then he wouldn't. No. But well, he's like a mighty deed though, Pastor.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, man. He'll probably be like framing walls at like 80 or something, you know.
Yeah. Well.
God willing.
Probably.
Vesta Megan's like 90, isn't she? Like 91.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
She's a go-getter. But there was an age put on the Levites from what they could, that 30 to 50 time frame. But that's interesting, and that's probably where they got rabbis need to be 30.
Yeah.
I want to find out, homework for me, I want to find out the age that they got married at then. Because you got fighting men at 20, and then you got, I don't know. It's just interesting.
Yeah, I don't know.
They probably definitely had to have a rule for dudes.
Yeah.
We need a little more direction.
Yeah, I have to have a rule.
Bro, you gotta get out.
Yeah.
Every mom's house.
Yeah. Either that or...
Yeah, you gotta move out by the time you're 30 or whatever.
Another thing it talks about here is, when we already talked about this before in the book of Leviticus, but there's it talks about sanitation, and it kind of just reaffirms that if you had like a skin disease or leprosy is what they generally meant by that, or something like a rash, or you needed to live outside the camp. There was an unclean camp.
Yeah, get out of the camp is like a forced quarantine.
Yeah, and that's not to be mean. It's just that spreads, and then you're putting everybody else at risk.
Yeah.
So with the unclean people, like to me, kind of like I don't know. Do they just like kick them out of the camp, or did they have like an extra, like kind of like another little, like a village outside, kind of like a?
From what I understand, they had like a place to go outside the camp where they would all be together. And basically you had to, like, if you're gonna, I think, be anywhere near anybody who is clean, you had to say unclean.
Yeah.
And that's embarrassing.
Because these people were still getting provided for and stuff.
Yeah.
By the camp.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly how all that worked. People that were sick and not able to like provide for themselves. I don't think they were just abandoning them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just,
That'd be terrible if they just like threw them outside of the camp. Just like.
One thing that I kind of wonder about is so we know that And this will be above some folks' heads, but a lot of people,
Yeah.
I think most people listening to us now, this will be in that right up their
Yeah.
alley. But God could have just healed all those people,
Yeah.
and that's His camp, and you wonder like, well, why? And sometimes it's hard to understand why God does a certain thing, but then you look at, well, also there wasn't grace, and there
Yeah.
wasn't remission for sins, and so
Yeah.
I wonder, though He could, and He did that sort of thing sometimes. I wonder if that had to do with just one of the side effects of living in that physical kingdom where the stripes for our healing we're not taking
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah. Exactly.
And we weren't set, while He sometimes did do things like heal people or,
Yeah.
that wasn't part of necessarily
Yeah.
the deal.
Right.
Because now, if you got the faith, you go to the elders, lay their hands, and you pray, and that is something that I feel is guaranteed 100% to us if we have the faith.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
it's supposed to happen.
Right.
Back then, in that physical time, there was
Yeah.
an unclean camp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like that's cool that you say that because
Yeah.
like I know that right after like Moses strikes the rock,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's further ahead of Numbers, isn't it?
It's further ahead, yeah.
The second time, yeah.
Yeah. So like they drink of it of the water that came out of the rock, and afterwards,
Mm.
it said that the Lord made a covenant with them, and they said, if you don't, if you follow after my statutes and my commandments,
Mhm.
then I won't put any of the diseases of Egypt on you.
Mhm.
Well, that was
And
actually
so-
before, yeah.
Was it before?
Yeah, that was
That's
actually
cool.
before, yeah. That
Okay.
one, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We thought you were talking about where he got mad at the people
Oh,
that struck
no,
the
no,
rock.
no.
And,
When he was supposed to speak to, the
Yeah.
first time, yeah.
Yeah. But it like he made God made that covenant, and so you're right. Like God could have healed them, but like I wonder if like they did something like they rebelled against
Oh,
them
yeah.
to make them like unclean, make put a disease on them, because like we read in Psalms. I don't know if you knew this, but like in Psalms 105, it says that there wasn't a feeble person among them when they came out of Israel,
Yeah.
out of
that,
Egypt. And so it's kind of cool to see that, like, out of, those, that hundreds of thousands of people, there wasn't, like, one sick person, one crippled
Yeah.
person that
Mhm.
wasn't able to, like, go into the wilderness.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And
that's
so
true.
It's kind of cool.
That's a
That's
great
pretty awesome.
point.
Well, plus, well, there was always a thing that it talks about in the Bible is when somebody sins,
Mhm.
that it'll affect their offspring to like the third and the fourth generation
Yeah.
or whatever, right?
Yeah.
That's always kind of a saying or whatever.
Oh,
So you kind of wonder because it seems like people did have that idea because when you get further and you get into Job, well, the consensus was that the reason why you're afflicted and you're sick, Job, is because you sinned against God, right?
Mm.
And so there seems to be that attitude in the Old Testament where if bad things like
Yeah.
befall you like that all the time,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
because you like sinned or did something right. So
Mm-hmm.
so maybe that's
Yeah, that makes a lot of
that
sense.
makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense later when we get to Miriam.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, that's good, man. That's a good point.
Miriam.
Good
Yeah.
points, definitely. So yeah, they had that leper camp outside the area, and the more we do this though,
Yeah.
the more I'll see little things like that let me see the comparisons between old and new.
Yeah.
The law and grace and what the difference is in Old and New
Yeah.
Testament, and how under the Old Covenant you're guaranteed all the promises of the Old Covenant,
Yeah.
but you don't get both, right? And then in the New Covenant it's completely different.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it's just so cool to see they're different deals.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like the
Mhm.
New Testament, the New Covenant's like a new deal
Man.
almost.
Dude, man, I can't imagine. I mean, I struggle,
Yeah.
to do right, a lot of times, and even Paul said, hey, in the New Testament,
Right.
I know what's right, but I don't do those things that are right,
Mhm.
and those things that are wrong. I do those things or whatever, to kind of paraphrase. That's where I find myself a lot of times, and I think, man, if I was alive and back in Old Testament times, like I mentioned earlier, it's like sometimes you don't get a second chance.
Mhm.
Right.
When you mess up in the Old Testament, it's like
Yeah.
because God is there in a very physical form, and His holiness like doesn't stand like wretchedness, right? And so a lot of times God's holiness or God's power just like deals with something, right then.
Right away.
I'm so glad that there's mercy, like there's grace in the new covenant, Jesus.
Yeah.
So it's like, whew, man.
Yeah. I think we were talking about another time. I'll tell Moses how like you could almost, to a degree, you could buy sin.
In the
a
Old
way,
Testament, yeah.
In a way, yeah. I mean, you were still guilty, and you still had to confess that you did this.
Well,
and
it
then
depends
you had
on what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might die.
It is, you might die or become a leper, like whatever.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not. It's almost like it was just so physical. It's like you almost could. You know what I mean? It's just, yeah, for some things, like something. One.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, definitely not everything, because then you're dead. Then you're a dead man.
But that kind of goes in right to the whole like test for adultery.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the jealous offering.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. For the listeners that like went over that, you're probably like, what? That's one of those things that God just kind of like throws in there, and you're like, what in the world is all that about?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, yeah, there was such a thing as called a jealousy offering, and it's basically if you're a dude and you thought your wife was like running around on you or whatever, cheating on you,
Yeah.
you could like take her before the priest, and she would offer up a jealousy offering. So it could be like real, like she was really cheating on you, or it could be just imagined, like you thought maybe she was, but she wasn't really. But yeah, so she would have to go before a priest, and she would have to come with a certain amount of like fine flour or whatever for like an offering, and then the priest would take some holy water. He called it holy water, which is basically like water out of the tabernacle, and then take some of the dust off the floor of the tabernacle and mix them together, and would make the wife drink it. And so basically, also he would write this like curse down or whatever on a piece of paper, well, not piece of paper, but leather or whatever, and like wash it in that water, and that was the water that she had to drink.
Yeah.
And so basically, if she was really like cheating on her husband, this water, which they call bitter water, would cause her to get sick.
Yeah. It would cause her abdomen to swell up and her womb to shrink.
Yeah.
Basically.
So basically, I kind of think of it as like looking like, okay, maybe she looks like she's pregnant, but she's not really.
Yeah.
And then childbearing was a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were barren, it was kind of like you were kind of a curse to your family, or like kind of like a people
Like
talk
you did
about,
something wrong.
People would talk about you behind your back, and and so she would become kind of like a curse to her family or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Now, this is different from if you're caught in the act of adultery. We've already talked about this.
Yeah.
If you're caught in the business, you
were dead.
You got stoned. Yeah.
You got stoned along with whoever you cheated with or whatever.
Yeah, they were stoned immediately. Yeah. But if you did this in secret and there's just like a suspicion,
and no witnesses whatsoever or whatever.
Yeah. Later down the line, there's a similar. I know there's a similar law that we're going to come to for the reverse, where the woman, like the man cheats. There's something with getting slapped in the face in a sandal, and we're gonna get there, but not in this. Yeah. But yeah, that's just kind of a random throw in there. And if the woman was, of course, not guilty and she drank this concoction by the priest, nothing would happen to her.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you think about like the role of women kind of back then? It's a touchy subject.
Yeah, it's a real touchy subject.
Because when you read it, we've talked about it before. Some things are kind of like they were kind of man-made already in place, and God just kind of allowed them to go along with it.
Yeah.
And so you don't know if it's like you don't not really thinking it's like a biblical thing.
Yeah.
You really like promote it or whatever. He just kind of let the people accept it or whatever. So because I mean you find later in Scripture there's women that are used of God, so it's not really, and they hold positions and things, so it's not like
prophetess and
so it's not like women are I don't know, less than men
In God's
but-
eyes.
in
Yeah.
God's eyes, but in the culture and things back then, it kind of was. They were almost like possessions, almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
It definitely seemed that way.
Hard, yeah.
Because if you look at anything that God says, really talking about women, I mean, really, if you look, anytime he talks about marriage, he's talking about one man, one woman.
yeah,
But you know they had some polygamy. They
Right.
had some of them had multiple wives. But anytime God's like, hey, a leader needs to be. Anytime he's talking about a leader, whether a king or a bishop leader, he says husband of one wife.
yeah,
You know.
Really?
Yeah. See, there's just things that if you look, if you're really looking, God tolerates things. Like
Yeah.
if you look at even when they're talking about divorce in the New Testament, and they're talking about how in the days of Moses there was divorce, God tolerated it, but he hated it.
Right.
yeah,
And he only tolerated it because the people whined so much.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
So you see things that he allows to happen. Another time we'll get to in Ezra, or it could be in Nehemiah, same time frame though, where the people living in Judah after it's been conquered are married to all these women from other nations,
yeah,
and that's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But even though in Jewish culture, and we've talked about this before on the podcast, you can become
Yeah.
a Jewish proselyte where you fully take on the teachings of the Jews and you live as one of them.
yeah.
You can do that to become a Jew. Well, there's an instance where Ezra makes all the men married to these foreign women divorce.
yeah.
He makes the men divorce the women. And so my thinking is that, you know, Ezra had some authority that God had
Yeah.
given him, and he chose to do it that way, but maybe he did not have to do it that way, and maybe that wasn't even the way that God would have done it, but he let it slide.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, so you see different
Yeah.
things where you see that people are doing things, but if you look at what God has to say on the matter, and that's what you always want to look for, guys, when you're reading through your Bible. If you take everything as God
Yeah.
approved of everything that happened, you're gonna miss the bigger picture. What's neat is that you
Yeah.
get to see what man does versus what God actually says, and you'll
Right.
see that
Yeah,
he tolerates quite a bit, but he didn't like polygamy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because anytime he speaks on it, on marriage, no polygamy. Anytime talks about divorce, he hates divorce.
yeah,
And although he does say that the man needs to be the leader of the home,
yeah,
he doesn't. If you look at what God has to say about things, you'll see that man's own ideas and the culture of man
yeah,
kind of have some things to say that maybe God may not agree
Yeah.
with. You
yeah.
know?
Because and when we get to the New Testament, I mean, God says men shall love their wives like themselves, right?
Yeah.
And
That's Christ of the church.
yeah, if you treat your wife like a possession, then you're not loving her as you love Christ or as you love yourself, right?
Mhm.
So there is, you know, some of these things are, I think, a part of the culture at that time that carried over. And even in the Old Testament, there are women in the Old Testament that rise to some
Mhm.
semblance of power. One of the judges, I think,
Mhm.
was Deborah or whatever.
Yeah, Deborah.
Yeah. So, you know, it's not like women couldn't hold positions of power and all those things, but I think it was a cultural thing that they were kind of treated as property in some instances. So,
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of tolerance on God's part towards the
Yeah.
things that men do, and there's a lot of authority given
yeah,
to men who sometimes use it in the wrong way,
Yeah.
and it's not always punished. You know, there's always there's some allowance there. You know,
yeah,
it's interesting.
It is interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see if you go back and see what God actually has to say about things versus what happens. And I think
Mhm.
people have trouble separating that in the Bible. They have
Yeah.
trouble seeing, and if it's your first time to ever read through it, it'll be a little confusing. And oh shoot, it's your fifth time reading through it. Things will be a little
it'll be
confusing.
confusing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It starts to make more and more sense,
Yeah.
but you know, still, there's
Yeah.
even if you read it, we've got people in our church that, you know, they're in their 60s or 70s or whatever, and they've read the Bible through a couple times every year.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah.
you know, you
Yeah.
add up to all that, and there's still
I
stuff
think
that
I think
confuses
Bonnie's read
you.
it like 50 plus times or something.
I wonder how many times pastors read it.
Oh man, I don't know.
Like
'Cause
he
he tries to read
reads
it like 3 or 4 times a year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The most I've done twice in a year.
the
And,
most you've done is twice.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
most I've done is once in a year.
Yeah.
I'm trying to do twice this year, but
You
I'm
can-
already behind.
Yeah. I think you'd have to do 7-8 chapters a day.
Uh huh.
You could do
I
it.
think it's like
Yeah.
6. Or,
Oh, okay.
oh no, it is 8. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. It is 8.
So we got to find a little tangent there, but it's a good tangent because it's jealousy offering. I see things like this, you know,
Yeah.
and these things do kind of confuse me sometimes.
Yeah, well, because I have questions about it,
Yeah.
and I've been going to church for a while, so I know other people that are like maybe listening to this that haven't been going to church or just kind of curious about it.
Mm.
I know that's going to be the one of the things that you kind of cue on
Yeah.
and have questions about it. You know, because we look at our society today, and with the equal rights and all these things that that are big and that we still talk about.
Mm.
Whether it be pay gaps, whether they're real or imagined or whatever, there's still a feeling that there's a difference between the sexes, right?
Mm.
And I mean, there is a difference between the sexes, but between our eyes and what God sees is different. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
Well, just a quick mention, a couple other
Yeah.
things that I don't think that God really approved of, but tolerated to some degree,
yeah,
is prostitution and slavery.
yeah,
But he had some laws regulating slavery, like on
Mhm.
how you could treat a
Yeah.
slave, and if it was a Hebrew slave, it would be an indentured servitude, and there were rules. We talked
Yeah.
about all that Jubilee and the Sabbath year and all that last time. But
yeah.
you think God's original plan is for anyone to be a slave?
Yeah.
No,
Mm-mm.
No,
I don't think so. And prostitution, I mean, it flat out says fornication
Yeah.
Yeah.
is
It's-
a
it
no-no.
it defiles your body, which
Our adultery.
later in the New Testament, whenever there's grace and we have Christ living on the inside now, in our hearts, basically our body is a temple, right? So we're not supposed to let anything defile our body.
Mm-hmm.
The
Those
Bible
are the
says
big
we're supposed to be
differences.
holy because He's holy. For such is our reasonable service, is what it says in the New
Mhm.
Testament. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that, man, we could just keep going on this all
Yeah,
day
dude,
because
this
I've got
is-
something to say about that.
It's
But we'll,
really good stuff.
Numbers 1 through 18.
Yep, that's what we're on.
Bring it back.
Nazarite
Bring it
vow.
back.
Yeah. Now we're gonna get onto the Nazarite vow, and up ahead you're gonna see a fellow named Samson. We're gonna talk about him in Judges, and guys, I can't wait to push through these first 5 books and get into Joshua,
Yeah.
where the really cool stories are
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
But we're gonna get into Samson, who's one who takes a Nazarite vow. But this is the first time you hear him talk about a Nazarite vow.
Yeah.
And there were the different rules for the Nazarite vow, where you shaved your head completely near the door of
At the
the
beginning.
tabernacle at the
Yeah.
beginning. You shave your head bald, and then you would not partake of anything from the vine that could be associated with wine in any way or strong drink.
Grapes.
So grapes, raisins, like
Vinegar, anything
Yeah.
that's like distilled or whatever. No.
yeah, you had nothing to do with it.
No.
You were not to touch any like carcasses of animals or
Yeah.
anything that could make you unclean, because remember that was part of the sanitation laws of Israel. They did not touch any dead bodies.
Yeah. And
Or-
so while you're doing all this, you're letting your hair grow out. You're not shaving your hair
Yeah.
anymore. So you do it once at the beginning, and then you don't touch it
Yeah.
until the time of your vow is complete. So whatever long you vowed to be a Nazarite or whatever, then
Mhm.
you weren't supposed to touch your hair or do any of these things that Robert just mentioned.
Yeah, we were joking before this. Me and Moses and Chris were joking about. So this is for like an allotted amount of time you do this, right?
Yeah.
So we were joking around about like what if you're almost near the end of your vow, and
Yeah.
then you touch a dead body on accident, or you pop a grape in your mouth. And I was saying
Yeah.
like, what if like
You
back
thought it
then
was
it's
over.
I'm gonna eat a grape at midnight. What's when my vow's over? And then you eat one at what you think is midnight, but it's like daylight savings.
Yeah.
You didn't know. You
Yeah.
go back.
Yeah, because the deal is, it's like if you broke the vow before the time was up, you had to go like before the door of the tabernacle, shave your head again. They sacrificed some animals to atone for your sin, basically to make you clean again, to sanctify you again. And you had to start your vow all over again. So
Yeah, that's
all the
fun.
time before didn't count.
Yeah.
Right.
So you mess up on the last day or whatever, and you got to start on the
Yeah. You know, this is a side note for the future, but little things we could do going forward.
Yeah.
If we ever wanted to have like, even after the Bible series, we can kind of go back and highlight different things. Like we could do a
Yeah.
whole episode probably just talking about the Nazarite vow,
Oh yeah.
or Old and New Testament, like the question you asked in Sunday school about
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
differences and
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
stuff like that. You know,
Well,
and
and
it'd
remember,
be awesome.
because stuff like this.
Yeah.
I mean, once you get to the New Testament, it's got all kinds of like things,
Symbolism.
similarities and actually like nuggets, that just kind of get brought to the light.
Mm.
Because the Bible talks about men having long hair as a shame,
Mm.
except in this instance as a Nazarite vow.
Yeah.
Mm.
Basically, you're shaming yourself as a vow to God, right?
Yeah.
You're humbling yourself as a vow to God.
Yeah.
So interesting.
And this makes me think of like all like the like passion movies or anything. How like they
Yeah.
always like make Jesus with like really long hair and like an unshaved
Yeah.
beard. I wonder if they like mix up like Jesus being a Nazarene with
Mhm.
like him being like under a Nazarite vow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Jesus wasn't under a Nazarite vow.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of it comes from Michelangelo's just depiction
Yeah.
when he
Oh,
painted
really?
Jesus. Yeah, and so almost all this imagery we get of Jesus today, probably nothing like him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He probably, I'm sure they all had kind of shaggy-ish hair because of the time, but they didn't
Yeah.
have long hair. The men
Yeah.
didn't, but they had general bushy beards. So that's probably what he looked like. He probably, shorter hair than that and
Yeah.
a big old beard. You know?
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
we get it mostly from Michelangelo. But I think that could have been like the concept,
Mhm.
when Michelangelo was thinking about it. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, that's because I grew up seeing all the pictures and the portraits, like Jesus, all the paintings and stuff, and so I always just assumed that he had long hair. And then when I started really getting into the Bible, I'm like, what? Yeah, he probably had short hair.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's. I mean, there's no telling. He might have had long hair. He might have been, even though he might not have been like making a Nazarite vow. He may have been, shaming himself in public, I guess, for God.
Mm-hmm.
As a symbol, kind of a symbolic thing. So who knows? I don't really know, but all I know is the Bible does say it was a shame for guys to have long hair.
Yeah.
Unless they were doing this Nazarite vow. So.
Yeah.
And that was just a vow to get yourself closer to God, just as an extra thing that you could do for God.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, kind of like the vows. Last time we were talking about the vows in Leviticus, where you can make a special vow to the Lord, and if you wanted to dip out early, you could pay the value of your vow in money,
Yeah,
plus like a fifth extra or something.
yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, there is different things like that. Like the Nazarite vow, that other type of vow. Vows were very, very important.
yeah,
You did
Yeah.
not say, and you'll see an example of this in Judges with Jephthah. But
Yeah.
you did not make a vow
yeah. You better be careful what you say.
Oh, yeah.
unless you meant it. Yeah.
And especially if somebody heard you say it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're in trouble.
He said.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And to not do it would be like a big sin.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, like you're in
Yeah.
trouble. You better do what you say.
yeah. So
Very intentional society.
yeah, so
We're on the priest blessing on the people.
okay, yeah. So that was just one thing we just wanted to kind of mention. In Numbers 6, Aaron has like a little blessing like at the end of that chapter, and just one of the things that we wanted to point out from that's kind of cool was there was this little scroll that was part of an amulet, and it was found actually at some excavation site kind of south of Jerusalem, I think. It was found, and it dates back to like 600 BC, and it actually has that blessing from Aaron, like inscribed on it, from 600 BC. So it's one of the oldest or the oldest biblical text found. So that's pretty awesome. That's the reason why we just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, that's older than Dead Sea Scrolls, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that's pretty. And all it was this little scroll rolled up and made part of an amulet that they wore around their neck or around their wrist or something.
Yeah,
So.
but back to the importance of words and vows. The significance of that blessing that he prayed on the people.
Yeah.
That was like almost like a promise of God. When you receive a blessing from somebody, like the patriarchs leading up to now, like when Abraham is blessing his sons and Isaac, that blessing that goes forth is like this promise. It's like it means so much.
Yeah.
Whereas today, words are so watered down.
Right.
Meaning is so watered down because of people don't keep their word like back then. That to them that would be so important and valuable. I could see why they would want to save it and remember it. Where today it would be like, yeah, cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I'll tweet it.
Yeah,
yeah,
I'll tweet it.
that's how cool it was. I can't even remember what the blessing said. That's like our what we place significance on nowadays is like way different than what they did back then.
Yeah. I just think we gotta get back to that. It's when you read your Bible and you see something in there that's a promise, or when God says, "If you do this, I'll do this." Take that very seriously, because let that build your faith. Anytime in the Bible you see God making a promise or giving a blessing, usually usually it's an if then. If you do this, I will do all of this. Take that as he means what he says. So
Take it to the bank.
yeah, when you're reading that, don't think of it like you might have said this to somebody. Think of it, God says he's going to do this, and that's something that will build your faith.
Yeah.
So we're on the offerings. The people gave, so for every 2 tribes of Israel, 6 wagons total were given. So for every 2 tribes, they gave a wagon, one wagon, and then there was an oxen given per tribe.
Yeah.
And these wagons and these oxen were to move the tabernacle and all the different, everything moved on carts, basically, like the stuff that the Kohathites moved. No, not the Kohathites, the Merari, tribe of Merari would moved around.
And Gershon,
Yeah, they would use these carts to do it.
So that was like, as soon as the tabernacle was erected, that was the tribes of Israel gave those things to the Levites. And then they also had the, and talked about it in Leviticus too. Whenever the tabernacle goes up, Moses had to sanctify Aaron and his sons, and then the next thing that had to be done is the Levites had to be sanctified, because these were going to be the other priests and people who dealt with the tabernacle. And so basically, whenever they took a sacrifice, in our last lesson in Leviticus, a lot of it was so the person who sinned or whatever brought the animal to the door of the tabernacle, and then the priest made him lay his hands on it, and they slayed the animal. It's almost like the person's sin was like passed over to the animal, transferred to the animal, and then the animal was slain and paid the blood price for whatever that sin was.
Right.
So here, like, the Levites are being dedicated, and the whole congregation comes together and puts their hands on the Levites.
The knife.
And the Bible talks about the priests bear the sin of the congregation. So the tabernacle bears all the congregation, right? So, and so that's another reason why you think about churches and like pastors of churches. Well, even today, when you're following a shepherd of a church, you hope that they're sanctified.
Yeah.
Right.
That they're prayed up, and they're listening to God. They're attuned to the Spirit of God. That's what you want. That's what a pastor should be, right?
Yeah.
And so in those days it was the same way in a much more physical way. But so all the priests and the workers of the tabernacle had to be sanctified. They had to be pure and cleansed, and that was the way that they became cleansed in the beginning. So that's kind of cool. So they had to basically shave all the hair off their body, and wash their clothes and wash themselves, and then go before the tabernacle. And
when we ordain ministers too, though, we still today, and they did this in the New Testament.
yeah,
They kind of did like a version of this where everyone put their hands in the heads of the Levites back then. Well, when they were ordaining like a new minister, the elders would come and put their hands on the heads of the new minister to be, and they would pray for them.
yeah,
And for them to have anointing and all that. That was in the New Testament, and we still do it
yeah.
even today. You see like ordination ceremonies of ministers, and they still kind of do that now. So it's carried on.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And they got the Passover.
Yeah. Well, kind of the first Passover since Egypt.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was the first one before they even came out of Egypt. That was the first Passover. And so this is a year later from that point.
Yeah, and we already covered in previous podcasts, like how God had wanted them to, everything he wanted them to do for that festival of the Passover. But he told them, wait for the new year to start again, and that's going to be when you do it. So this would be like 14 days after the new year? Or was this on the new year? No, it was on the new year, right? And
well, it's like the last 7 days, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Because there was the unleavened bread first.
Yeah.
And then there was the Passover.
So I think it either started on the 7th or the 14th. I think maybe it started on the 14th.
Yeah, that's what I want to say. Yeah, the month of Abib.
Yeah.
Abib. I think it's like in March or April, too.
Alright, so they celebrated the second Passover. So this is the first one after coming out of Egypt. And basically some people came and said, hey, we touched the dead body on an accident. We defiled ourselves and we're outside the camp now. We're unclean. So can we how are we going to celebrate the Passover? And so Moses went before God, and God said, okay, it doesn't matter that they're unclean. Wherever you are, you have to celebrate the Passover. So all the people that were defiled and outside the camp had to celebrate the Passover outside the camp. Yeah. And so that meant if you were on a journey or something like that, didn't matter where you were, you had to celebrate the Passover. Stop what you were doing and celebrate the Passover. If you were in the camp and you were clean and you didn't celebrate the Passover, you're in trouble.
Bad news.
Bad news bears.
Yeah.
Old Testament bad news.
Old Testament, yes. That's an OT bad news.
Oh my goodness.
Basically, when it says
it's original bad news.
well, I think the wording is that you'd be cut off from the tribe of Israel, and that meant you're dead.
Yeah.
So you're cut off literally.
Can you imagine all that like before cell phones? Like, so what if you like defile yourself in an accident? You're going straight to the unclean camp, right? You gotta tell your wife, right? But she doesn't know. Like, where'd he go? Did he make himself unclean? Did he die?
You know? I'm sure they had some way. Maybe they were allowed to go home first. I don't know.
Yeah.
Send a messenger. I don't know.
Whistle calls.
Yeah. So, let's see.
Someone leaving the unclean camp because they're good now. Passing. Can you tell my wife I'm here? She'll be mad.
Okay, so the next thing we wanted to talk about was the pillar of fire and the pillar of cloud.
Which is really just a reinforcement.
Yeah, so we talked about that before in one of the previous episodes. But yeah, that was the visible presence of God that he was in the camp.
Yeah.
And that also told him when to pick up and move.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever the pillar of fire at night or the pillar of cloud during the day, whenever those lifted up off the tabernacle, then it was time for them to pack up and move. Didn't matter if it was day or night or whatever.
Yeah.
So that was a sign to move. And whenever the pillar stopped, that was where they set camp. So
And something I learned pretty recently ago was about this, and like I was telling y'all how the entire from Genesis all the way to to Joshua, there's so much foreshadowing of the New Testament. And Brother Mark Morgan was talking about the cloud and the pillar of fire over the tent of meeting, and he was saying how like it so like it foreshadowed the Jesus' baptism, and like and so he was saying like, you know, when the pillar of cloud and fire
Yeah.
came down on the tent, you know, it told all the Israelites that, yeah, this tent is made out of the same old material that your tent is made out of, but there's something different about this one. And in
That's
this
awesome.
and in the
Wow.
same way that, you know, when Jesus was baptized and the dove came down and anointed him, and people saw it, you know, it told the people, you know, it wasn't telling them that there was a second or third person of the Godhead. You know, it was saying that, you know, this person looks like just everyone else, but he's not the same.
That's pretty
And
awesome.
so
That's cool.
yeah,
That's
I don't know, it's like the best way like Jesus' baptism was explained to me. Like Brother Mark
yeah.
Morgan just like nailed it right there. Like
Yeah.
That's cool. I'll have to check that
If
out.
you're on the YouTube, look up Mark Morgan,
Yeah.
and I've told the guys before, if he just sat down and like talked for 10 hours, I'd listen for 10 hours.
wow.
I mean, I love hearing that guy preach.
Cool. All right, so we got the pillar of fire and a cloud, and then also God told him to make two silver trumpets. Basically, they were out of one piece, and they were beating the trumpet into a trumpet, and those basically that was to organize them, to call them to war, to call them to come to the tabernacle or whatever. So they blow on the whistle. I mean man, I just lost it. They would blow on the trumpet for an alarm or whatever. However many times they blew on it would signal a certain thing, and it'd cause the camp. So keep them organized, and so they know what was up. Since there's like several million people here in this camp.
Yeah.
So,
Pretty much the last half of Exodus, down into even now and even for a while, is all kind of just the setup for how Israel's supposed to do things.
Yeah.
You know, that's basically what these last few podcasts have just been over, is
yeah.
all of these things are just, and we're going to get to this point where it's all kind of story, history
Yeah.
of what happened after. But you're going to see all these things, you know, they're just kind of getting settled into their
we're-
new life
yeah.
after Egypt.
We're
still.
trying to make this kind of stuff interesting.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it can be kind of hard, you know.
Yeah.
But when you study it, you find, like, you know, we've talked about, Moses talked about, and we talked about before, is you start seeing similarities or foreshadowing or symbolism.
Yeah.
You start seeing these kind of things, even in people's names and things like that. So it can be interesting when you really start getting into it. But on the surface, maybe you're like reading it for the first time or whatever.
Yeah.
And, you know, we start off with no knowledge, and you read, and it's just like a story or book. It can be one of the most boring books or part of books, you know, of a book, until you start understanding what some of the things mean. So, and even then, it can be kind of boring. But, you know.
Yeah. Back on the silver trumpets, so when they get to put them into use, right after they make them, they break camp after having been at Mount Sinai for a while. 3 weeks after the census, they get the old trumpets out, and
Pick up and leave.
they pick up and leave. But as usual, right, we've gone on a streak without complaints from the people.
That's just because we've been talking about the law. Right?
Yeah. They're already complaining again. And so this means that, like, you know, all this census stuff took place not long after they made the golden calf. So we've already had that rebellion, right? Maybe in a matter of a couple of months or something, maybe less than that, there's already trouble again.
Yeah.
People already grumbling and complaining. And they start doing that, and God smokes some folks. Is what I
He
put
gets
on
mad
notes.
pretty quick, and like,
He sets some
burns
people on
up
fire.
he burns up some people.
Yeah, on the outskirts of the camp. And that place became called Taberah, which is a place of burning.
Yeah.
They love to name things.
Yeah.
But still, after that, right?
That
there's
wasn't
some
enough.
there's some foreigners among them that kind of started the grumbling, but then the Israelites joined in, and they were remembering all of the delicious food and just easy life they had in Egypt, which they were slaves. I guess I forgot that part.
Yeah.
But all the meat and all the onions and garlic and leeks and Oh, it was amazing.
Yeah, because remember, since they've left and they grumbled about not having any food the first time,
Mm.
God provided manna from heaven, right? And so they hadn't really had, other than whatever animals they could forage or whatever, or hunt, and other things that they come across. They really hadn't had anything besides manna.
Mm.
And so, now they're grumbling and complaining about it.
Yeah.
So, they got the pillar of fire and the pillar of cloud right in front of them on the tabernacle, and
I'm still
God's
complaining.
presence shows up every once in a while on the door of the tabernacle and some other things, and
That's not enough.
that's not enough.
Yeah. Now,
So-
one of the things it said too is like, in the New Living Translation, remember all the fish we used to get for free in Egypt? Like all the free fish?
Yeah.
Where's my fish fillet?
So they start grumbling and complaining, and
There's no HEB.
yeah. So not good. And basically, Moses starts complaining. He complains to God now. He's complaining about the people that are complaining about him. So Moses is like, did I give birth to all these people?
Yeah.
Did they spring out of my loins or whatever? I don't know. So,
That you should say to me, carry them in your bosom as a nurse carries a nursing child.
have I conceived all these people? And basically he's like, just kill me now, God. Just do me a favor and kill me now.
He's basically.
If you're not going to help me out, just
It's
kill
like
me.
it's like he's calling them all like babies that he used to take care of, like
Yeah.
infants.
Yeah. So God answers Moses and says, "Okay, I'll take care of this. I want you to appoint 70 elders and bring them to the tent, to the tabernacle, and my spirit that I put on you, I'm gonna put on them, and so you'll have 70 people to help you."
Mm-hmm.
And so basically, Moses calls 70 of the elders, and only 68 show up.
Yeah.
2 of them are kind of like, running late or whatever, Maybe they had to change one of their kids' diapers or something,
Maybe
or,
leave them clean, just get back
take
in
out
the
the
camp
trash
from the way
first
off.
or whatever. So who knows? But only 68 of them show up, and God puts the Spirit on all 70 of them, even though only 68 are there at the tabernacle.
Yeah.
And so they all start prophesying.
Yeah.
And the 2 guys that were late that weren't there yet, they start prophesying in their tents and throughout their camp or whatever. And so we got one young person that hears them, and he runs and he tells Joshua, who is like Moses' right-hand man.
Joshua.
Joshua, these guys, they're supposed to be over here, and they're prophesying in the camp, and Moses told them they weren't supposed to.
Okay.
And so Joshua, he thinks he's doing a good thing too, and he runs to Moses, and he's like, "Hey Moses, when you told these guys they're supposed to come to the tabernacle, well, these guys didn't come, and they're prophesying."
Mm-hmm.
And Moses pulls one of those, kind of reprimanding them, and he's like, "Would to God that everybody prophesied."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So kind of like a little lesson for Joshua.
Yeah.
And those 2 guys did eventually show up.
Yeah. The names are Eldad and Medad, which is pretty funny.
Yeah.
Both dads.
They're
I guess.
dads.
The dads. It's kind of funny that Moses is like, I'm tired of being basically what he's saying is, I'm tired of being a big babysitter.
Yeah.
And God's like, well, now there's 71 babysitters. Because trust me, the people aren't going to grow up.
Yeah.
Seriously.
So, and remember before Moses' father-in-law,
Jethro, yeah.
Jethro was like telling Moses, you don't have to take care of everything, appoint all these elders and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It doesn't number how many elders he appointed at that time to take care of them, so I'm assuming these 70 are probably out of that.
Yeah.
But Moses still tries to take the burden of everybody.
Yeah.
So he hasn't learned. He's learned a little bit from when his father-in-law reprimanded him,
Mm-hmm.
but he hasn't learned all the way yet.
Yeah. I still think it's funny. Look, Moses, I can't make the people grow up. I can just give you more supervision. How about that? Okay, I'll take it.
All right, so we got. Okay, so now we go back to what the people were grumbling about, right?
6-1.
So they're grumbling about the food.
Yeah.
They want meat, and So basically, God says, okay, yeah, they wanted meat, all right, I'm going to give them meat. I'm going to send quail, and I'm going to send them like, basically what it says is like 2 cubits worth of quail, like a certain distance, like outside the camp, like all the way around the camp. And so you can take that literally, like, okay, there's going to be like 3 feet of quail, where the people walk outside the camp and there's going to be like 3 feet of quail. Or you can take it as the quail are flying low enough, they're flying like 3 feet off the ground so people can just like snatch them or whatever. Either way you want to take it. But God basically says, I'm going to give them so many quail, they're going to be coming out of their nose.
I'm sick of quail.
So they're going to be so sick of quail.
Yeah.
And it just kind of like represents too, because you know, like Egypt is a type of sin.
Yeah.
And so, like, you know, when they were craving their sin, you know, in a way, you know, like, you know, once God just like gave it to them and handed them over to it, you know, they just got so tired of it.
I've separated you, and you keep wanting to go back.
Yeah. Do you know why he didn't give them beef? You just can't get tired of beef. It's delicious.
I know what they were saying though. Where's the beef?
Where's the beef? And another guy's like, and the fish, remember, as much as we want. It's like a buffet over there.
So basically, so God gives them all these quail, and the people get all excited, and they run out and they catch all these quail, and they start eating it. And the Bible says they didn't even get to finish eating before God strikes them all with a plague. And so basically, all the ones that were grumbling about not having any flesh to eat, is what it said, any meat, they all died of the plague.
Yeah.
And so they named that place
Kibroth Hathava.
Yeah, which actually means like graves of lust.
Yeah.
And so all those that lusted after meat, they died.
Yeah, and New Living Translation calls it the graves of gluttony. But same thing, you know, that lust for the old ways, as you said.
I want it my way.
Yeah.
So
then we have a bit of trash talk. So Miriam and Aaron, these are the siblings of Moses. They start complaining about his wife Zipporah, who's they call it a Cushite woman. Yeah, they call her a Cushite woman. So she's a Midianite.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming
Ethiopian or whatever. It uses several different things. You know?
Yeah, and so but she's not an Israelite.
Yeah.
So they talk trash, and God gets angry. You know, because they're grumbling about Moses and they're grumbling about his wife.
Well, see, that's where it starts.
With the wife.
The grumbling starts with the wife, with the Zipporah or Zipporah, how you say it?
Zipporah, yeah.
And it starts there, but then it goes on to like, well, you know, Aaron's like, well, I'm his brother. And Miriam's like, well, I'm his sister. God doesn't just speak to him.
Yeah.
We're just as good as Moses. You know, Moses isn't the authority over us or whatever.
Aaron's like, I make a mean calf.
Oh wait, I lied about
man,
that.
you think you would have lied?
It just sprung out.
I think you would have learned this
lesson. It just popped out of the fire.
I just incriminated myself. I meant to say it just formed itself. It wasn't me. No, but
Make a wicked calf.
yeah. So anyway, so they started grumbling about Moses' authority. And you know, what makes him so good? Because he didn't even marry a Hebrew wife. So anyway, so that's where it starts, and then basically, God just shows up in the door of the tabernacle and talks to all 3 of them, and basically calls them to a meeting where they're all 3 together in front of the door of the tabernacle. Meanwhile, you know, this is going down in front of everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't sound like it was secret at all. It's like in the door of the tabernacle. And so I don't know, it says he speaks to all 3 of them. So I don't know if it's just to them in a voice that only they can hear, or if the Levites or the people around them can hear. I don't know. It doesn't say.
Yeah.
But basically, I mean, he pretty much levels them. He basically says like, okay, there's a lot of people that are my prophets, but I speak to my prophets in dreams and visions. But my homeboy Moses, I got a special relationship with him. I talk to him face to face, voice to voice. And basically like, so who are you to call out my boy here.
This
Because I'm
Chris-
talking to him.
this is how
That's right.
Chris hears God's voice.
That's right.
My homeboy.
My podcast, homeboys.
Yeah, me and my homies. So, yeah, but I mean that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
That he shows up face to face and calls down, Aaron and Miriam, and reprimands them. I mean they're lucky he didn't just kill them outright.
Right.
I mean everybody else he like pretty much burns up.
Or leave her with the disease.
And so that was. So we were talking about this earlier. So he doesn't really do anything God doesn't do anything to Aaron because of this, but he gives Miriam leprosy. I mean, like her whole body is like covered in leprosy, and so basically Aaron starts praying. And he's like, "Oh God, please don't lay this sin at our feet, at our feet, and please heal her." And then Moses prays, and so when Aaron prayed, nothing really happened. Didn't say that anything happened. But
God's like, really, schmuck?
Yeah.
Moses, what do you got?
Yeah, Moses fell down on his knees and like prayed that she would be healed, and God said basically, well, if her father spit in her face, she'd be defiled for 7 days. So she's gonna stay out of the camp and be defiled for 7 days before she can come back in, and she'll be healed. So that was pretty hardcore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So basically, like I'm spitting in her face, she's gonna be defiled for 7 days,
Yeah.
but I'm healing her.
Yeah. That's
So-
like, when God spits in your face, you get leprosy.
Yeah, so that's pretty
funny.
But man, that goes back to we talked about the relationship between Moses and God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just how awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
that's pretty deep.
That's
Yeah.
intense. Yeah.
That's-
I don't know if I could, like we always say, like, man, I want a relationship like God and Moses had, but like, I don't know. I mean, it's not that I wouldn't want it, but it's
Yeah.
like it would be so intimidating, like, to know that like you're gonna speak face to face with God.
Yeah.
Boy,
Yeah.
you better be right.
Well, see, that's
You better live good.
yeah. That's the thing. I mean, we were talking about being sanctified
Mm-hmm.
earlier. I mean, like Moses has got such a close relationship with God that he's really got to walk a tightrope here.
Mm-hmm.
Where he can have that. And the Bible talks about, to whom much is given, much is required.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's deep for Moses. He's sacrificing a lot, like of personal things. Basically, his personal life belongs to God.
Yeah. I mean, he
Like
went
every
on
aspect of his life.
2 40-day fasts.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
back to back.
So we're not going to get to it in this podcast, but when Moses gets mad at the people when he strikes the rock, when God tells him to speak to the rock, but he strikes it with his staff, and then God tells him he can't go into the promised land. I always wondered about that. I'm like, man, that is hardcore. Moses did all these things, and lived this way or whatever, and then God tells him he can't go into the promised land because he like struck the rock. And it wasn't just that he struck the rock. Basically, he said he was reprimanding the people, but he was acting like he was doing the things for the people or whatever in that one moment, just because he was so angry. But he had such a close relationship with God. We're talking God talked to him. I mean, voice to voice, face to face almost, right? And so that relationship was that close. He had to be that sanctified that whenever he flubbed the dub, whenever he messed up, I mean, that was it.
Yeah.
Man.
So, I mean, that's
Wow. I never looked at it that way.
that's pretty hardcore.
That is.
Yeah.
All right, so next thing. So we got
12 spies.
oh yeah. So Miriam's healed. She comes back in the camp. So the next thing is they actually get to where they're going. They're outside Canaan. They pick 12 spies, so basically it's one person for each tribe. They pick them to go into the land of Canaan for 40 days and go gather the fruits, scope it out, see who's all there, and bring that back their report. And 2 of those guys are Caleb and then Joshua. And let's see. So they go, they come back, and they give their report. And they tell about how good the land is, that it's flowing with milk and honey. They bring back a branch with a cluster of grapes on it that's so heavy they have to carry it between two people. So they bring back all that stuff, and they tell everybody that. And then basically they say, well, there's some tough tribes over there, man. Those Canaanites are tough. And then there's all the sons of Anak.
Yeah, descendants of Anak, yeah.
Yeah, which are like the giants, yeah.
Which makes me wonder about Anak
Yeah.
and where because he was known, obviously, and then knew that he was their descendants.
Yeah.
That they were, you know what I mean? So this Anak giant character, they knew about giants for sure. There's a thing about them, which we talked about a little bit before, I won't go into, but I want to learn more about Anak and how they knew about his descendants.
Yeah, because we mentioned that, we were talking about the Nephilim and all that.
Yeah.
And that, the flood took care of all that at that time. So, we have another instance, maybe the sons of God coming down and mingling with the daughters of men or whatever. There was some question with that last time, whether or not some of that was coming out of the book of Enoch, whether or not you believed it was, or we believed it was angels coming down and taking women as wives, and then their children being the giants or whatever. What's that?
It definitely was though. Well, probably.
Yeah.
I lean
Well,
that way.
that's the direction that both of us lean.
Yeah.
But the flood was supposed to take care of all that, so you wonder if some of it kind of went on again or what.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and that makes me wonder directly who the Anak is.
yeah.
Because there's something with him.
Yeah.
Because it's his line after that that's a problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, these giants are all throughout the land, and of course, this really intimidates 10 of the 12 spies.
Yeah.
And we didn't write their names down, and most people can tell you, who know anything about the Bible, they can tell you that the two spies that have faith in God still were Joshua and Caleb.
Yeah.
But no one can name the other 10,
Yeah.
and that's because they were worthless.
Yeah. And the thing is, what families did they come out of? Caleb was what? One of them was Judah.
I think it was Caleb, because then Joshua would have to be a Levite, right? Because he became the priest.
Joshua was a fighting man.
Yeah, he was a fighting man.
Oh.
Yeah.
But he was kind of like Moses was his mentor.
Yeah, and Joshua was kind of like a general almost.
Yeah.
He was.
Yeah.
I want to say one of them was maybe Ephraim.
Yeah. I think
it's
right.
Judah and Ephraim.
Yeah.
Guess I can look at it really quickly.
Benjamin.
So.
These spies go over and they see everything going down in Canaan, and 10 of them are very discouraged and think there's no way we can beat these giants. Yeah. And if you'll remember, so now the land is flowing with milk and honey, but in the days of Abraham, and even into the days of Isaac, there were like regular famines that would cause them to have to go to Egypt for help. Or now this land is very fertile, and now people have moved in.
Yeah. And these guys are like whining and complaining that we can never. These people are too strong for us. We'll never be able to beat them. And this is like what we were talking about before. While the pillar of wind and fire or whatever is above the tabernacle, and God's presence is there, and all these things.
After they walk through the parted Red Sea.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
We'll never be able to beat these guys.
Yeah. After they watch the Red Sea decimate Pharaoh's army.
Yeah. And of course, Caleb and Joshua both are like, Moses and Aaron fall down, and they're trying to intercede, and Caleb and Joshua are saying, man, we should go up now. God will give us the victory. These people, their defeat is already guaranteed. I mean, God's already told us. If God is for us, then we won't have a problem beating them.
Right.
And the people get so riled up and angry at Joshua and Caleb for saying that they try to stone them.
Yeah.
And so God has to show up again. I think his presence shows up in the door of the tabernacle or whatever. But And then basically he tells them, well, okay, since you were saying, they say basically, well, they get to the point where they want to appoint somebody, a leader, to bring them back to Egypt. And they said, well, why'd you bring us out here in the middle of nowhere so that our children will be prey?
Right.
And we'll die, we'll starve, and we'll be beaten and all those things. And so God says, well, okay, well, just so that you know that I'm God, none of you guys, first of all, the 10 spies I'm going to kill right now that gave a bad report.
Mm-hmm.
And then everyone that grumbled, and which is basically everybody, that's above 20 years old, is not going to make it to see the promised land. They're all going to die. So they're going to spend wandering in the wilderness for 40 days. And their children, the ones that they said were going to be a prey, those are going to be the ones that actually make it into the promised land. That's with the exception of Joshua and Caleb.
Yeah.
So,
Now, Joshua looks like was from Ephraim,
yeah.
and Caleb was from Judah. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Those are like the two of them, like the prominent tribes
Yeah.
that you see a lot of things come out of.
Yeah. You see some from Benjamin too, but
Yeah.
then you see some bad stuff come out of Benjamin.
Yeah.
I just read about that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, the little kidnapping of the one.
Oh my goodness.
Chopping some.
Oh, we were talking about that too, not long ago.
Yeah, we were.
We were in the
Like,
youth room talking about that.
mhm.
Oh, you just kidnapped him. Cool. Yeah. We'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there. That's a whole nother story.
Yeah, whole nother story.
That'll take a while.
Yeah. I was looking up the tribes. Where did you get to in the outline while I was looking up which tribes Caleb and Joshua were from?
All right, so
Basically, God's punishment
Oh,
for
where he
not.
senses them to wander in the wilderness.
Yeah.
So he
Okay.
sends them to wander around the wilderness for 40
Yeah.
years.
And then oddly after that,
Yeah.
now they're like, no, you don't come to think of it.
Yeah, we're
We're
we
good.
we're good. We can do this. And of course Moses and Aaron. Well, so the people want to go up, and they want to go up to the mountain. They want to fight. Now, it's kind of like when you're a kid and your parents punish you because you didn't do something, and you think that if you go back and take care of it, your parents won't make you like get punished or whatever. And usually it doesn't work. It didn't work, because God doesn't lie, right? So he's so he gives them this punishment, and basically the people are like, oh well, we like this, we like the other thing before better, like actually being able to go into the promised land and live, right? We don't want to die, and we don't want to wander in the wilderness for 40 years, so we're going to go up to the mountaintop now. And so Aaron and Moses basically they tell him, hey, don't do that because God's not with you. Don't go up there. And they go up there and they get beat by the Amalekites. And come running back, and I don't think the Bible says how many died, but
There's Amalekites and the Canaanites. So if you remember the Amalekites from before, they were the first group that clashed with Israel when they came out of Egypt, and they defeated the Amalekites. I guess the Amalekites are like uber revenge time.
Woo-hoo!
They get together with some of the other Canaanites and they fight them off.
Yeah.
And God allows them Israel to get whipped.
So we'll put on.
So it's kind of settled. Hey, you're not gonna go into the promised land before I said, and but he does give them some laws concerning like things they're gonna do in the future after they get to the promised land. He's like, look, you're gonna wander around for about 40 more years, and some of the old farts are gonna die off, and I'll bring the new folks in. But when you get there, he changes it so that grain offerings and drink offerings would be given with all sacrifices.
Yep.
And also that the firstborn of the people are redeemed, but the firstborn of all the animals are to be sacrificed. So if you remember, there is a redemption of the firstborn, and that's because of the Passover. And so you offered a sacrifice in exchange for all your firstborn children. He kind of reinforces that, and then all the firstborn of the animals are also to be sacrificed.
Yeah.
But Moses had something interesting to say about grain offerings. If you want, what you were telling us earlier.
This Moses.
This Moses. Because I had done research on like grain offerings, because I did a Bible study in Isaiah, and basically while they were going out in the wilderness, there was a personal significance and difference between a grain offering and an animal offering. just because the animals, they had them, the animals were reproducing, but the grain that they had while they were in the wilderness, because they were constantly moving around, they didn't have just that constant just supply, yeah.
Unless they
of grain.
unless they came up with some wheat growing in a field or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the grain that they did have was just grain that they had carried out from Egypt, and so for them to sacrifice some of that grain was pretty important, and
It meant it's like carried a heavier weight.
Yeah,
With the animal sacrifices.
right.
Yeah, because Moses mentioned earlier, we were kind of talking about it before, and he was talking about we kind of just took for granted the grain and wine offering, like, oh, that's nothing compared to an animal. An animal is a lot more important to him, but in a big, significant way, and like you pointed out, it wasn't.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a really neat thing to learn. And so these are things that so when they're in the promised land and that grain is a little more, it's there all the time,
Right.
and they're making wine all the time because of the grapes.
Yeah.
He's saying now these will just be things that you offer with your other sacrifices. There will always be a grain offering and a wine offering, a drink offering, and these will be given kind of to the priests so they have something to eat.
Yeah, these are going to supply the priests and their families.
Yeah, because remember the Levites don't have their own land when they get to the promised land.
Yeah.
They're going to be spread throughout serving as priests, and so they're kind of taken care of by the other tribes.
So this brings us to another cool story. This whole thing went down with Aaron and Miriam and Moses, and now we're kind of like duplicating the whole thing with the Levites. There's a family of the Levites, the family of Korah, and 250 Levites. They basically approached Moses and they basically said, hey, who died and made you God over us?
Yeah.
Pretty much. We're priests also. We're Levites. We're holy people also. Why are you the only one in charge? You're not the only one in charge. So they questioned his authority over them. Not just his, but Aaron's also.
Mm-hmm.
And so bad things happen to them. But there's also there's also two people from the relatives of Reuben, the family of Reuben, and they're actually so they actually have another grumbling charge of Moses. So Korah was basically that. Why is just Moses in charge and we're not in charge too?
Yeah, Korah the Levite. Yeah.
Those are the Levites. Yeah, and these two guys from the family of Reuben, their thing is basically Moses. You've been a terrible leader, and you haven't been able to get us into the land of milk and honey. Like it was Moses' fault, right?
Yeah.
So they kind of hold him accountable for that. So these two groups of people, basically, Moses calls the family of Korah to the tabernacle, tells them to bring a censer and put fire in it and incense, and bring it to the tabernacle. And he goes to get the other two families from Reuben, but they refuse to come. They just kind of stand in the door of their tent, and so he gets angry with them. And basically, he comes out and he says, "Okay, well, if Korah and his ilk are right, then they'll just die a natural death or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They'll die a death of men, right? But if I'm right, or basically God's right, if God's in charge, then He's going to create a new thing, and He's going to open up the earth under these guys and swallow them up." So
You probably,
yeah.
upon Korah, I'm having some second thoughts.
Yeah.
So
Hey,
Korah,
I didn't mean it.
Yeah. So basically, what Moses said happens.
I was just hungry.
So the ground opens up and it swallows Korah and his family, and it swallows the two families of the Reubens, and then the other 250 Levites or whatever, fire comes down and burns them up. So the ground swallows some of them up, and fire burns up the rest. And then those censers that the Korah had become holy now, right? So they're just like in a pile of ashes.
Yeah.
And so basically, God has them collect the censers and make flatten them and make like coverings or whatever for the altar or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's pretty.
And that was the first rebellion, right, in chapter 16? Because isn't there another
Yeah.
one?
Then there's another one. Yeah, and that's he actually causes a plague.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 14,700 people are killed in
Yeah.
the plague.
So yeah, so more people start grumbling, and they start questioning Moses' authority, and just grumbling about their situation. And yeah, so God causes a plague to sweep through, and
Much
so-
bigger one than
yeah,
the one.
a much bigger one. And Moses tells Aaron, "Quick, go get a censer and go like run through the camp, so that the plague is stopped."
Yeah.
And so basically, he takes the censer and he runs there, and he kind of stands in between the people that are dying of the plague and the ones that haven't got it, and stops the plague.
Yeah.
Like 14,000 some odd people
Yeah.
dead. 14,700 dudes are
Yep.
killed via plague. That's what our notes
Yeah.
say. And that was probably not just dudes. That was like
People in general. Yeah. And then that's when Aaron's staff buds right afterwards to
Yeah.
show that he's
So he's
the
he's,
chosen
yeah, he's
priest.
gonna be the man.
yeah.
So even though he just lied about a golden calf
Yeah.
and sacrificed to other gods on an altar while
Mhm.
Moses was up in the mount, Aaron has been the chosen priest,
Yeah.
and so God chose him. He's going to be the chosen priest, and so basically he has everybody, all the tribes of Israel, get a little section of wood, a little rod or whatever from a tree. And Aaron brings his rod, and they all put them together, shut them up in the tabernacle, I guess. And then the next day they go and they get the rods. The rods have the tribe's names on each one of them, right? So they bring them out, and all the other tribes of Israel, their rods look the same, but Aaron's has actually budded and produced almonds.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the show, like, hey, he's the man, he's God's chosen priest,
Yeah.
head priest or high priest.
Yeah.
And then that rod stays inside of the Ark of the Covenant.
That was
Right.
an Ark of the
Along
Covenant.
with the tablets, 10 Commandment tablets and stuff.
And the first showbread, isn't it too?
Yeah.
And it was actually the first.
It's some manna too.
Yeah, manna. Yeah.
Oh, that's right,
Yeah.
not the showbread, the manna.
Yeah, it was the manna.
So.
I'm sure it'd be delicious if we found it.
If it
It's
was
supposed to taste like honey and fresh oil. Is what it was supposed
Yeah.
to say. So it's the most awesome biscuit.
Biscuits
It
from
was-
heaven.
Yeah.
That's where Popeye's got the recipe.
That's right.
So you know. Yeah. Can you imagine, like, so you're Aaron and you make the gold calf, and you're stuck in a place between admitting how great your craftsmanship is, but trying to lie to save your neck? Because maybe you're like, man, that's a good-looking calf, but then you're like,
And imagine like you're Levites, right?
yeah,
And you're like thinking like, you kind of wonder like some of these people that are grumbling like, about Aaron in charge, like, man, he's the one that like made a golden calf and sacrificed for it. Why is he in charge?
Yeah, seriously.
Like, man, I
Yeah.
didn't do anything like that.
yeah.
So maybe
You know,
that could be one of those things.
that's kind of the things that transfers to today.
Yeah.
Because, people aren't perfect, and sometimes they mess up,
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean that God's anointing is off of them.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we sit there and judge them,
Wow.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting.
That is interesting. Hey, that could be one of our gold nuggets.
Yeah, we'll put that- that's one of our gold
I
nuggets,
claim
guys.
it.
Yeah. So we have a section of gold nuggets where Chris and I say things that like stood out to us that we
Okay.
liked. So do you have any gold nuggets for these chapters? Things that you took away from these chapters?
Me personally,
Yeah.
I guess just like Korah's rebellion, and how they just keep rebelling, and I don't know.
Well, I mean, like, we talked about it before, and I keep going back to it too, man. It's just like so crazy. Well, when you think about it, it's so crazy that these miracles, and all these things are being done like in front of people.
Mm-hmm.
Signs and wonders. People are getting burned up. ground's opening, plagues are going, you know,
The Red Sea.
the Red Sea.
Mhm.
So not all of it's for harm, you know. A lot of it's for good. Manna from heaven, all these things.
The water from the rock.
Yeah, it's like all these things. It's a visible sign in front of these people, and yet they still like can't get it together.
Yeah.
But it's the same today.
Right.
You know, now the covenant's a little bit different, and whenever we come to God and we get filled with the Holy Ghost and we have Jesus living on the inside of us, but yet we're still not perfect, and even though we have God in us, and we can feel His presence, and you know we can talk to Him, and we can have a relationship with Him, we still sin.
Experience awesome
Yeah.
things in the spirit
Yeah,
too.
we still
like,
find
you know,
ways
week
to
in and
sin,
week out.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I always think, well, if I lived back then and I was in front of all these awesome signs and stuff,
I wouldn't do
I wouldn't
that.
be like Kura. I wouldn't be like those guys. But man, I wonder. Like,
Come
would
back
I?
to Chris back then, the pitchfork. Yeah, Cora! Get him! Yeah, he made the calf!
Yeah, man, I don't know. You know, I don't know if I'd be able to keep from sinning or not. You know, I'm sure I wouldn't be. But you know, like we said, most of the sin could be excused with the sacrifice.
Mm.
But to say that I wouldn't be like Korah or one of the people from Reuben's family, you know, grumbling about, you know, Moses, well, how come you couldn't lead us to the promised land? Because I don't want to take any fault on my own, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so what makes me think I wouldn't be like one of them, you know,
Yeah.
if God's presence was there.
Mm-mm.
So,
I guess another golden nugget for me is like just like the idea of like, you know, when they were on Mount Sinai and like
Yeah.
God spoke, and you know, I know we weren't talking about Sinai, but I mean I guess it's kind of related
Yeah.
because it's like in this time frame. But you know, when God spoke to Moses and it shook the mountain, and the people of Israel were scared and were like, you know, why don't we just let you do the talking?
yeah,
And like, you know, even when it like came down on like the tabernacle, you know, and like the cloud, the pillar of cloud and the pillar of fire, like coming over them, like, you know, falling on top of it,
yeah,
and like, you know, God with that kind of anointing, you know, the same God that shook that mountain
yeah,
and that came down on the tabernacle, you know,
yeah.
how like people think, you know, in today's world that, you know, when God, that same God that shook the mountain and that same God that made His presence so thick, when He fills you, how can you not expect something supernatural?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, you know, it goes back, you know, like there's so much good stuff in here, and it just like proves to me that like,
Yeah.
man, like what I experienced that day I came into church and talked to you,
Yeah.
like that changed my life, and like that was a supernatural experience, and you can experience it,
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And so
That's a great point.
That's pretty awesome.
That is a great point, man. Man, I felt we had to end on that, but but I guess if I've got a gold nugget, it's just the closeness that Moses and, you know, the closeness that Moses had with God, and the fact that like he had to, I mean, you already know that God sees everything that you do,
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and you know we repent over things that we do, and we strive to do better, and that's always gonna be a part of our walk with God. But it's like we don't always think of Him as right there.
Yeah.
But, you know, or we know that we can just pray and like we can repent and God will be there to hear us and listen, and He's always merciful and good. But think about if you're Moses and you gotta talk to Him audibly back and forth.
Yeah.
You know? Like you don't get to have an off day in your
Yeah.
spirituality.
Yeah.
You better be ready. And I just
yeah.
can't imagine like I think it would be wonderful and a little intimidating. But I think any like relationship with God is a little intimidating when you realize how big He is,
Yeah.
and who
Yeah.
He is, to the extent that you can understand it. And then later, you know, it's of course it's a wonderful thing, but there is
Yeah.
always a little intimidation involved
Yeah.
with the fear of God. You know, that respect, that reverence for who God is. You know,
Yeah.
and then knowing on that level must have been, you know, a lot for Moses.
Yeah.
You know, because constantly his humanity is juxtaposed against like this great, awesome God that he's speaking to audibly.
Yeah.
You know, that definitely keeps you humble, I'm sure. And they said that Moses, when they say where's Moses was the most humble man and stuff.
Yeah.
Meekest man on earth.
Yeah, he had to have been because he spent so much face time with God. It's like, how do you not feel?
Well, you know,
Yeah.
that was written by Moses.
Yeah, that's true.
Wow.
Oh, maybe he's prideful.
Oh my goodness.
Maybe that's what God said about it.
It's like he's sitting there praying, like, sure, I'll just go ahead and add that in there.
Super meek.
They rebuked Moses, and he was, I was humble.
Yeah.
One of the things that keeps coming back to me is separation.
Yeah.
You know, God keeps finding ways to separate His people, and even in today's world, and it's getting tough to be a Christian in today's world. I mean, you get persecuted. You know, people find out you're a Christian or whatever, and they badmouth us for you know, thinking that we condemn other people, right? So they're doing the same thing back to us. And also, it's, you know, people that know they're living a life of shame and guilt. They maybe haven't put two and two together in their mind, but they're just searching for something, you know, and they want to justify the things that they do. And so when they see a Christian person mess up, you know, it's kind of like, well, you did this or you did that, you know. And like what we were talking about just a minute ago, well, what about Aaron whenever he messed up? Maybe people were like, well, you did that, you know, you caused us to sin. You know, you made the God for us, you know, the golden calf or whatever. And, you know, people can be like that, you know. And not just people outside the church or out, you know, non-Christians or whatever. Christians can be, you know, people that claim to be Christians can be cold, you know, unforgiving and, you know, not very nice people or whatever. But we live in the world, but God calls us even now to be separate from the world. And that's a whole nother way of living, a whole nother lifestyle, a whole nother way of thinking, of putting God first. And so, you know, I just keep seeing all this physical separation. God calls them out of Egypt. He allows them to go through Egypt first for a purpose. You know, they get that slave mentality for 400 years, and then God breaks them out. And now all of a sudden they're liberated, and they're free, but under His authority, right? And so they're still in the world, but they're separate. That's His chosen people, and you know, people that are living for God today are His chosen people. So that separation just keeps coming back to me and how important it is, and it causes you to grow, you know. Yeah. So to grow in God, to grow in your relationship. So it's very important. So just because we live in the world today doesn't mean we have to, you know, do the things that this world puts in high esteem or whatever. Yeah. So we can be separate. So,
yeah.
That's good.
Well, I think that about wraps us up, huh?
All right. So I guess stay tuned. Hopefully next week we'll have Numbers 19 through 36, I guess.
Yeah.
The next lesson will be. And are we gonna have David next week?
Well, Clint's
okay.
who we talked to come on the 21st, but I know David would be available by that time.
Okay, so it'll either be Clint Bowles
Or David.
or
David Holland.
Holland, yeah.
Both
Yeah.
awesome guys.
Yeah, both great.
Both awesome guys. So,
Yeah.
all right.
I'm just gonna
Till
shut this
then,
down.
see y'all later.
All right.
Thanks for coming, man. Yeah, thank you.
Oh man, I need to stretch.
Yeah. Well, Chris, it is 7.
For real, son?
Yeah, it is.
What was that, about 2 hours and 15 minutes?